Hi, Captain Larry, W6WUH. And I just want to take a little time to talk about the history and the development of 6-meter AM and the kind of radios that were built to use it and why that might be important. I mean, 6-meter AM is probably one of the least occupied parts of the spectrum and modes used that's around in ham radio today. But it's got a history that goes way back to the 20s and 30s, certainly to the 30s, where little 1 and 2 tube transceivers made with free-running oscillators as a transmitter and a Regenerative Recivers receiver were working on what was then 5 meters, 40-some megacycles, which later became 6 meters. And a lot of VHF development began there, and it's where we learned that there was actually DX propagation on the VHF bands in 6 meters. And the direct modern descendant of those old rush boxes is this. So here's a Heathkit 6er with its 2-tube receiver that is copying a beacon on 6 meters 100 miles away. And that ain't too shabby. Now this is very antenna dependent. The better the antenna you've got with a radio like this, the better. In this case, we're using a 5-element beam, and the conditions are pretty good right now. Signals are S7, S9 from this beacon, but I think even if they were S3, we'd be able to copy it with this little regen. They're not great for selectivity, but they've got a lot of sensitivity. And they'll copy AM, they'll copy FM sorta, and they'll copy CW. All right, so let's take and look at the next generation, which is a super hat receiver. Let me change the antenna switch over here. Here we've got circa late 50s, early 60s double conversion super hat, and it's copying that at whatever it says on the meter there, S9. So this is kind of comparable to what you can get with a communicator 2, communicator 3, some of the other pre-Novices type receivers, doing an incredible job. I'm sorry, neither of these receivers have BFO, so we can't really get the full appreciation of what they're doing. Now let's look at a sophisticated receiver. This is arguably the best tube-type receiver for 6 meters that anybody ever built commercially. This uses a Collins filter, double conversion, Novices front end, crystal controlled BFO, crystal controlled first mixer oscillators, and the VFO, the tunable element oscillator in the receiver down around 8 megacycles. So it's a 10.7 megacycle IF and then a 455 IF with Collins filters and product detector for sideband and diode detector for AM, adjustable noise limiter for sideband. Extremely good receiver. Just hardly ever got any better than this in tube-type receivers. The only thing it lacks compared to a Collins is it's still got a coil and capacitor type analog VFO. It's still very stable, but if it had had an LMO, like a Heathkit or a Collins, it had been the Ne Plus Ultra. And some other features of this thing, we could say, well, okay, the Heathkit SB110 used a New Vista front end and had an LMO. Sure it did, but it didn't have 120 dB of dynamic range on the receiver. This receiver is extremely difficult to overload. You can put a transmitter 20 kcs away from it, several hundred watts, and run full duplex using this receiver. Never turn the receiver off. And very few receivers in the world can do that. So, there you go. Anyway, I just want to make a pitch for how important this band was for the development of all of the VHF techniques that we use today. And a lot of the low noise, high stability techniques that we use on HF as well have filtered down. Now the modern day hotshot receiver looks like this. And of course it's got digital readout, it's got DSP, but on the HF bands, this thing does exactly what this Clegg interceptor receiver did on HF in 1963. It used a converter for the HF bands to upconvert to a VHF IF. In this case, this is upconverting 3 to 30 megahertz up to 6 meters, and using this 6 meter receiver to eliminate images and intermod and other kinds of problems like that, which is exactly what this modern receivers do now. All the HF transceiver architecture is this way. They're all up converting to an IF in the 60 megahertz range. So that kind of architecture was firmly established by Squire Sanders back in 1960, 63, and these radios still can't rival the tube technology for high dynamic range. And as far as noise figure is concerned, if you put a modern gas FET front end ahead of this thing and establish the receiver noise figure that way, it would rival this in almost every aspect. Very high stability. It's not as high stability as this, but it's extremely high stability. You listen to sideband on it all day long, and it's not drifting around. It's got crystal filters. It's got all the other good stuff. So there we go in a nutshell. And I want to encourage guys to get on 6 meter AM, and there's lots of spectrum there to use, and you get up to 50.4 and above, and you're not getting in the way of the sideband folks. You can tune your Yagi so it'll still work there, and have forth, whatever. You can push a button on this radio and go AM in an instant. DX70, any radios made in the last 10 or 15 years will do that. And 6 meters capability, no problem. If you pick up a Benton Harbor Lunch Box like this, doesn't matter how cobby it looks, it's easy to make it go. A couple of capacitors, make sure the tubes are good. Spray the controls with Deoxit D7. Adjust the regeneration. Load the transmitter up to your antenna, and Bob's your uncle. Any kind of dynamic or crystal microphone will work fine with it. Grab a mic to cut off an old CB radio, stick it on there, you're good to go. You don't have to spend a bunch of money, but if you get yourself a Lafayette or a Heathkit or a Polycom or whatever it is, they're out there. A Gonset communicator, they're inexpensive. You'll learn something going through them. The more sophisticated the technology is in the radio, the more work it is to to overhaul it and pick it up and get it going, but you're going to learn something. And, you know, if you're not too adept, get a 6er. And, you know, work the guys with your ground plane that are 10 or 15 miles away. Or put up a Yagi and do what I'm doing. Listen to, of course, I got 1,000 feet elevation here, but, you know, you get up a Yagi and talk to guys 50 miles away. W6WUH, thanks for looking.